Welcome to Authentically Aligned, a space where growth is rooted in safety. Reconnection happens through the nervous system, and we return home to ourselves. On the last episode, we discussed what it looks like to return home to ourselves. And after returning home to ourselves, it is important for us to reconnect and reacquaint with the trust that we have for ourselves. It's important for us to be able to now identify the reasoning and the voices in which are ours, and the connection and the reasoning and the voices that our relationship with our God or our higher power, and be able to hear and listen clearly. Commonly, when we've lost trust for ourselves, we second guess our decisions. It looks like overthinking. And it can also look like seeking outward validation. So the intention of this episode is to practice, be aware of, and understand what rebuilding our self-trust looks like. Not forcing it, but moving from a space of understanding and moving gently toward trusting ourselves again. So going back to our experience when we're feeling disconnected from ourselves, this in itself leads to self-doubt. This leads to us experiencing a conditioning to seek external validation. And inside of our survival mode, we lose absolute connection with our intuition, with our inner voice, with our connection to self, and with our connection to God. And when we experience this type of disconnection, it becomes very difficult for us to discern between our intuition and our anxiety. These things feel very similar inside of our body, inside of our mind, and inside of our spirit. And if we are not fully aware, fully connected, we can so easily mistake or confuse the two. This leads us into a deeper dive of lack of self-trust or lack of being able to hear our intuition. And so this is where the reconnection comes in. And as we reconnect, how do we rebuild our trust? How do we create a new foundation, a new baseline for what it looks like to trust ourselves, to trust our inner voice, our intuition, and to know at the end of the day that we are making the right decision? And unfortunately, when we're experiencing this state of chronic stress, this state of survival mode, this state of disconnection, what ultimately ends up happening is we begin reaching for the opinions, the voices, the words of others, rather than taking the time to turn inward and hear our own voice, or even taking the time to build our relationship with God and hearing His voice instead. It is so common for us to want to call a friend when we're stressed, or call somebody close to us, call a loved one. And unfortunately, this only builds a deeper rooted disconnection from ourselves. And then we begin to question our own intuition, our own understanding, rather than turning inward, developing a true solid foundation for understanding. And as we do this, we create a newfound sense of trust within ourselves. But what happens is being in a stressful situation, having anxiety is so uncomfortable that we're not willing to sit in the discomfort and feel the discomfort in order to reconnect to ourselves, in order to listen and trust ourselves. So out of seek for temporary relief, temporary satisfaction, we reach to others, to advice, to whatever it may be. And that's what it is. It's temporary satisfaction. It's temporary validation, because what's really happening is we think that we're getting closer to having an understanding or having a solution or getting closer to ourselves. What we're really doing is we're running away from ourselves because we don't want to sit in the discomfort. And the reality is that this trust isn't lost overnight. This happens from years and years of conditioning. This happens from years and years of habits of having somebody who has a strong opinion, and you're consistently listening and you're consistently trusting this person. You know, when you have a deep rooted trust for somebody, you're more likely to want to hear their point of view, hear their perspective, and likely follow suit with those things. But is there anybody that you trust more than you trust yourself? And that is the question that you have to ask yourself is there anybody that I want to trust more than I want to trust myself? And at the end of the day, the answer should be no. I want to have a full relationship with myself before being able to have a relationship with anybody else. And this could even just be in form of mentorship. You know, when you're fully putting your trust into somebody, you are also taking that trust away from yourself. So this happens little by little. And also understand that in order to get back to full self-trust, that's also going to happen little by little. You're slowly going to have to start to question the things that people are telling you and understand and ask yourself, is this a value, a moral, a standard that I personally am choosing to live by? Or is this a value, a standard, a moral that somebody else has inflicted upon me? So in order to help us in rebuilding the self-trust and understanding what full self-trust looks like and what it does not, let's talk about the difference between fear and intuition. Our anxiety feels urgent. It feels loud. Just as I was saying before, it feels like something that we do not or cannot sit in and experience the discomfort. And on the other side of that, our intuition feels calm and it feels steady. Our intuition says, this is uncomfortable. This is hard, but I'm okay. I'm safe. And ultimately, I am going to make the best decision for myself. I'm going to make a rational decision. I'm going to make a peaceful, educated, wise decision. Our nervous system is designed to protect us. And while it does a great job when we are in a physically dangerous situation, it doesn't always do a great job when we are in a emotionally charged situation or a difficult situation where a decision needs to be made. And oftentimes our body and our nervous system does not know the difference between feeling the need to run for your life and feeling uncomfortable or challenged. Just the other day, I was having a conversation with my therapist, and I was telling her it was such a rational conversation from my standpoint, and I recognized that my body was feeling like I needed to run for my life. I was feeling so dysregulated. But on the same side of that, I knew that I wasn't unsafe. I knew that I was just uncomfortable. And it was a moment that we were able to both laugh about because it is real. Your nervous system and your body are going to inflict this fear upon you that feels so detrimental, that feels so dire, that feels so life or death. And inside of rebuilding this trust that you have with yourself and this connection that you have with yourself, you have to be able to feel this run for your life feeling. And then use your wisdom, use your knowledge, use your understanding to say, you know what? This is trying to cause so much chaos inside of my life. And yes, while this is uncomfortable, while this is hard, while this is challenging, I am okay to sit through this. I don't need to run for my life. And when you start to have these moments where you're not listening to your body and past experiences, you begin to start to have more of a trust for yourself and more of a trust for your intuition because you can talk this voice down. You can calm yourself down. You can regulate yourself, and you don't need to seek external validation. And understanding that, inside of making a life decision, inside of gaining clarity or gaining understanding, it's important to ask yourself, does this feel like pressure or does this feel like a knowing? Am I making this decision or am I taking this action because I feel pressured to do so? Or am I making this decision or taking this action because I know that it is the right thing for me to do? And oftentimes we don't take the time to self-reflect because our body, our nervous system is telling us that we need to act immediately. And probably 9 times out of 10, when we act immediately, we make a decision that is not in alignment with ourselves and is not in alignment with our intuition or the way that we trust ourselves. So as we embark on the journey to rebuilding our self-trust, what does that look like? Self-trust is built through small, kept promises. So for instance, if you tell yourself this week, when I start to experience anxiety, I am going to practice breath work rather than seeking validation. And maybe 7 out of 10 times you practice breath work rather than seeking external validation. Those 7 times, each time you make that decision to practice breath work over seeking external validation, you are slowly building trust with yourself. Rebuilding self-trust is rebuilding habits that have held you down, that have kept you back, that have kept you in this chaotic, dysregulated state of mind. And it's being able to actively make a decision in the moment. It's being able to listen and sit in the discomfort and recognize that while for this short amount of time, I'm going to experience more pain, more discomfort, more challenge. But each time I do this, I'm setting a new standard and a new foundation for the way that I view myself, the way that I treat myself, and the way that I take care of myself. Listening to your body's cues is huge. Even for somebody who maybe finds themselves endlessly scrolling, especially at the end of the day, you're scrolling because you need to disassociate. You're scrolling because you've had a long day, because you don't want to think about your own life, whatever it is. But if your body is exhausted, you're mentally, physically, spiritually tired, and you're continuously scrolling, you are ignoring your body's cues and you're giving your body what it wants in the moment. You're giving your body that temporary relief, that temporary dopamine hit thinking that you're making yourself feel better. But at the end of the day, you're stepping further and further away from listening to these cues. Whereas at the end of the day, if you take time to self-reflect, to understand what are the things that are dire that I do need to take care of, and what are the things that are not dire that I don't need to take care of. What does it look like for me to actually put my phone down and wind down for bed and go to sleep when my body says that I'm tired, rather than ignoring these cues? What does it look like for me to listen when I'm receiving hunger cues, rather than pushing through my busy day because I don't have time to eat? What does it look like for you to set a boundary when you feel anxiety or stress around a specific situation? What does it look like to listen to your body and recognize this doesn't feel right? I need to set a boundary. But how do you take the time to listen to those things if you're constantly distracting yourself? Following through on the things that you say that you need. So if you say that you need to start eating healthier, you need to start drinking more water, you need to start getting up and moving your body and going to the gym, but you continuously neglect these things, you are teaching your body that you can't be trusted. You can't trust yourself. But each time you make a decision moving toward these things, you develop a higher self-trust. And as you do this, you continuously build your intuition. You build your confidence. You build your authenticity. Understanding that it's not about perfection. The goal is not perfection, but the goal is consistency. Think about when you are building a friendship and somebody begins to consistently show up for you. This allows you to trust the person. So, do you think that when you consistently neglect yourself, or you consistently neglect your needs, you're automatically going to trust yourself because you have the best intentions for yourself? No. Your self-trust requires consistency. It requires discipline. And the more consistently you show up for yourself, the more self-trust you're going to have. Our self-trust grows through evidence, not through affirmation. So just as I said, you can have the best intentions for yourself. You can say, I want to do this and I want to do this, and I'm the kind of person that does this. But if there is no evidence to back this up, there is no foundation for self-trust. Every time that you listen to yourself, you teach yourself, you teach your nervous system that you are safe to rely on. It is impossible for us to connect back to our self-trust or even have a sense of self-trust without slowness, without slowing down. Because as we slow down, as we create stillness, as we create space, we leave room for understanding. We leave room to listen. We leave room to really check in on ourselves. Just as I said before, overstimulation disconnects internal awareness. So when we are giving ourselves that constant dopamine hit, we're listening to our nervous system and its receptors versus what our body actually needs in that moment. And we begin to neglect our own needs in order to fulfill the needs of our nervous system based upon a dysregulated state. So envisioning your dysregulated nervous system as this monster that is reaching for all of these things that are going to keep you dysregulated. You have to be able to identify and recognize what these things are. And you also have to be able to starve that monster that's inside of you in order to re-regulate your nervous system so that you have full autonomy over your mind, over your body, over your spirit, and over your nervous system. When we're receiving constant input, it drowns out our internal signals. We begin to take on the beliefs, the thoughts, the understanding of others without even second guessing and taking the time to listen to our own beliefs, thoughts, understandings. But when we slow down, we allow time and space for clarity to emerge. Think about when you are maybe in the shower and you have all of these clear thoughts, or maybe you're taking a long drive and you start to have all of these thoughts emerge. That is the type of clarity that we are trying to have at every moment in our life. But the more that you run away from that clarity, the less connected to it you become. Creating space creates space for alignment. It creates space to re-regulate your nervous system, to listen to the cues that are life or death, and to gain better understanding of what is just uncomfortable and hard. Reduce the urgency to act, reduce the urgency to speak, reduce the urgency to decide. Because really nothing is that urgent unless you are in a life or death situation. And more often than not, we're not in a life or death situation, but our body convinces us that we are. The more that you begin to have awareness of this, and the more that you can gain full understanding and clarity of these things, the more you're able to live with intention. You're able to understand my body's trying to keep me safe, and that's okay. But I recognize that this is outlandish, and I have to do what I know to be best for me and not what my body is telling me to do. So what does it look like to start listening again? Pause. Take a pause before responding or reacting. Take a pause before making a decision. And as you take this pause, ask yourself, what do I actually want? And sometimes it's not an in the moment question. It is a larger, bigger picture question. Because yes, while this one decision may seem so relevant and so dire, how does the solution to this affect the bigger picture? Check in with your body throughout the day. Don't wait until your nervous system is dysregulated. Check in before you experience the dysregulation. Check in with what it feels like to be regulated, to be calm, to be peaceful, so that when you start to feel dysregulated, you have an identification of what you need to get back to and what you need in order to get you back to that point. Take time to journal, and not to seek answers, but to seek yourself. Seek getting to know yourself. And as you seek yourself, all of the answers that you are seeking, all of the validation, all of the clarity, all of the understanding is going to naturally come. And it's not going to come from a place of forcedness, but it's going to come from a place of authenticity. Let decisions that you make be imperfect. We have our entire lives made imperfect decisions that actually ended up being perfect turning points, milestones, lessons, blessings for our life. And when you understand that You cannot mess up what is meant for you. Any imperfect decision that you make, you have confidence, faith, and trust surrounding that decision. Self-trust is not even a sense of certainty within yourself, but it's a willingness to listen. When you listen to yourself and you listen to your needs and you listen to the things that are important to you, and you're able to make decisions from that, that is where the trust begins. That is where the trust happens. When you start to make decisions from alignment, your life begins to change. You begin to live the life that is destined for you because you are listening. You are open. You are willing. But when you continuously make decisions off of the opinions or validation or expectations of others, you're not living your life for yourself. There is no trust, and your life is not your own. But when you're making decisions for you, when you're able to listen to your inner voice, to your intuition, to your God, you have less anxiety, you have less stress. There's less of a sense of urgency, more of a sense of faith. You don't feel the need to explain yourself because you know that every decision that you are making is in alignment with everything that is meant for your life. As you continue to do this, your confidence grows, but your confidence grows in a quiet, grounded way. You don't have to overexert your confidence or overperform your confidence because there is such a peace that surrounds it that you can move quietly, confidently, and grounded. Your self-trust creates emotional safety internally. Just as I was saying before, as you continue to trust yourself, you begin to grow your capacity to sit in the uncomfortable, to sit in the discomfort. And in turn, you grow your emotional safety because you know what you can handle and you know what you can't handle. And just like with returning to yourself, this is not about becoming somebody new, but it's about becoming somebody that is reliable to yourself. It's about becoming somebody that you can count on, somebody that you can trust. You don't have to have it all figured out. One of the greatest things that you can do for yourself is be able to listen and hear yourself again. As always, I'm going to leave you with a journal prompt for the week. Where in my life am I looking outside for answers that I already have inside? As you move through the week, notice the things that stayed with you from this episode and remember that integration happens slowly and quietly. If this episode resonated with you, I invite you to share it with somebody who may need. It helps us to share this space. As always, I am sending you so much love and light. Have a beautiful week.